listen up. Come on, let's go. Who the is responsible for this mess?
We'll pay for the damages, Kiefer.
Well. This is good. This is really very good. Murder's 6 months for all you at hard labor.
Nobody's been killed.
I beg to differ. In fact, someone's been murdered. Now you're all arrested.
It's between you and me. Why don't we just settle it that way?
You mean like hand to hand?
And afterwards, we're all free to go.
Agreed. By the way, there's just one slight little ground rule. This isn't you hit me, I hit you, you hit me, I hit you. Oh, no. This is I hit you. I hit you. I hit you. Every time he touches me, kill one of his men.
Don't be stingy.
Don't you come any closer.
Great reunion, Nicky.
Welcome to hell.
The story begins on the cold streets of Chicago with Nick Gunner, an ex-soldier who is down on his luck. He does not have a job and struggles to adapt to civilian life after years of military service. Life outside the battlefield has left him frustrated, isolated and completely directionless. Soon, a black limousine pulls up beside him, and a bodyguard steps out. He orders Nick to speak with the men inside the limousine, but Nick responds violently.
Nicholas Gunner?
The two corporate representatives, Warren and Lyle, who work for Nitro, a multinational mining company, step out of the limousine and calmly offer Nick a high-paying job to lead a team of mercenaries to a remote island in the South China Sea. However, Nick immediately refuses the offer, stating that he is finished with violence and military work and wants nothing more to do with bloodshed.
Would it help if we said who recommended you?
I know who recommended me.
Giving up the life can be as dangerous as the fight. So,
Later, Nick visits his former commander, Colonel Merrick, the man who originally recommended Nick to the Nitro Mine Corporation lawyers. Nick complains that he hates violence and no longer wants to do the dirty work anymore. However, Merrick tells him that soldiering is simply in his blood and cannot function in the normal civilian world no matter how hard he tries.
it's in our blood, Nick. You can't do anything else because your heart isn't in it.
Nick asks Merrick why he did not simply
Why didn't you
recommend Kiefer for the mission instead, especially since Kiefer is a psychotic mercenary who thrives on total brutality and destruction. However, Merrick explicitly explains that the mission does not require Kiefer's slash and burn style of mindless violence, which is exactly why Nick was chosen over him. Merrick eventually convinces a broke and desperate Nick to accept the job by pointing out that the massive payday is his only real chance to secure enough money to reconcile with and support his estranged family. After thinking it over, Nick finally signs the contract and begins tracking down and recruiting his former military comrades. Because all of them have fallen on hard times after leaving the service, they are now scattered across the United States. Nick first travels to Cicero, where he finds his first recruit, Jamal, working at a Chinese restaurant.
I guess they don't need that kind of help down at their 7-Eleven.
After that, he heads to a state prison in Louisiana and recruits the dangerous mercenary Blades.
What caused the people you want me to shoot at, man?
Lighter than you, but darker than me.
Shut up! Hey, shut up! Jimmy!
Nick then tracks down Jimmy G in Brooklyn, where he is busy shaking people down for money in the streets. Later, Nick heads to San Diego to recruit Ocker as well.
What's the bottom line?
Once the team is assembled, the entire group travels to Bangkok, where they find Nolan fighting violently with several locals.
We're hitting a tiny island at the edge of the South China Sea. The tribal council doesn't want to sign over the mining rights. We go in, lean on the locals, and convince them to sign the contract. Our employers have promised a $7,500 bonus per man once they sign on the dotted line.
Sounds a bit simple, doesn't it?
Did they say what the mineral deposits were?
What they're paying is none of our business.
The men decide they want to have some fun before beginning the mission, so they head to a local strip club to let off some steam. While the team drinks and relaxes inside the club, another mercenary named Grace Lashield arrives and is immediately harassed by a creepy local thug known as Goldmouth.
¿Alguna mujer te ha cortado el pijo?
Jimmy G steps in to help Grace, and his intervention quickly sparks a full-blown bar brawl. Nick Gunner quickly intervenes and halts the fight in an attempt to prevent his men from being arrested by the local authorities, but unfortunately it is already too late.
Who the is responsible for this mess?
The local authorities led by the Minister of Defense Kiefer arrive outside the club. Kiefer also previously served under Colonel Merrick alongside Nick Gunner.
Nick Gunner. This is good.
Kiefer threatens to imprison Gunner and his entire crew for murder and for causing mass chaos in the city. However, when Nick points out that nobody has actually been murdered, Kiefer casually pulls out a gun and shoots one of his own men dead on the spot.
Now you're all arrested.
All right.
Nick then makes a deal with Kiefer. He tells Kiefer that he will fight him one-on-one right there if Kiefer agrees not to arrest him or his men.
Agreed.
Kiefer accepts the challenge, but he
By the
creates
way-
rules of his own. He orders his men that if Nick touches him, they kill one of Nick's men.
Don't be stingy.
Kiefer proceeds to brutally beat Nick in front of everyone. To humiliate him even further, Kiefer places his boot on the back of Nick's neck and has it polished while Nick is forced onto his hands and knees on the ground.
Great reunion, Nicky. Let's do it again sometime, eh? Bye!
Later, Nick and his crew finally arrive at their destination in the South China Sea. There, they are greeted by a local islander named Po, an English-speaking native who serves as the primary translator and representative for the village elders. Nick orders his men to establish a perimeter camp on the edge of the village and warns the villagers not to come near their camp under any circumstances. Before leaving, Nick instructs Po to tell the elders that they must make up their minds and sign the document by the following day.
I told him what you said.
The next day, the villagers welcome Nick and his crew as honored guests. Each member of the team is presented with a large egg that the villagers claim is a rare delicacy. The villagers silently watch as the mercenaries crack open the eggs and swallow the contents. When Nick asks if the villagers only eat this food during special occasions, Po casually informs them that they never eat that stuff. Just before the elders are about to sign the contract, Goldmouth suddenly arrives with several armed men and launches an attack on the village. The villagers are caught in the crossfire, but Goldmouth's men are no match for the professional mercenaries. Nick and his crew quickly overwhelm them with superior combat skills and firepower. With his men defeated, Goldmouth escapes toward the beach and attempts to flee by boat. However, Grace fires a bazooka directly at the boat and blows it apart. Fortunately for Goldmouth, he jumps off the vessel just before it explodes.
Nice shooting.
After the battle, Po and the village elders flatly refuse to sign the corporate contract that would surrender the island's mining rights. Shortly afterward, the corporate lawyers arrive on the island and finally reveal the truth to Nick. The contract is not about gold at all. The island contains massive guano deposits used to produce high-grade chemical fertilizer worth billions of dollars.
We could make you a very rich man.
Nick is ordered to force the elders to sign the agreement, and if they refuse, he is instructed to execute every single man, woman and child on the island in order to clear the land.
You want me to kill people for bird shit?
Why not?
After hearing the truth, Nick returns to the mountains with Loki and discovers the enormous guano deposits hidden inside the sacred caves. While exploring the island further, Loki explains that the caves and the guano are the sacred treasures the villagers have protected for generations. At this point, Nick begins sympathizing with the locals and realizes that the entire corporate deal is a scam designed to strip mine the island and destroy the villagers' holy land forever.
How much money they pay you to burn our island?
I don't want to burn your island.
But you will if they pay enough.
Meanwhile, Blades becomes increasingly impatient with the situation and begins assuming control of the operation himself. When he starts threatening the villagers, one of the village elders steps forward and places his own hand on a wooden block. Without hesitation, the elder chops off his own hand using a hand axe. He then presses the bleeding stump against burning coals to cauterize the wound, proving to Blades that the tribe will never surrender under torture or intimidation. Nick returns with a completely different mindset and violently beats Blades in front of the others.
Get in the boat. Nobody tells me what to do. Get in the fucking boat.
He immediately orders Blades to leave the island and tells anyone else who disagrees with him that they are free to leave as well. Nolan, Blades, and Jimmy G decide to abandon Nick, although Jimmy G clearly feels conflicted about the decision. Grace sides with Nick, alongside Akar and Jamal. Meanwhile, corporate lawyers decide that a simple refusal is no longer enough, so they hire Kiefer to handle the situation through brute force.
You've hired Nick Gunner to do a job, haven't you?
Kiefer questions why the company hired Nick in the first place when the entire operation was practically happening in his own backyard. Before the meeting ends, Kiefer demands to become a full business partner rather than just another hired mercenary. When the lawyers hesitate and try to object, Kiefer violently strangles one of them until they agree to his demands. At the same time, the defectors, Nolan, Jimmy G, and Blades greedily accept the corporate money and officially turn against Nick Gunner. Nick later meets with Poe and the village elders. The elders initially consider fleeing the island to avoid the coming bloodshed, but Nick explains that the corporation will hunt them down no matter where they go. He convinces the tribe that their only real option is to stay and fight for their homeland. The villagers finally agree and decide to return to the ancient warrior traditions of their ancestors in preparation for war. Soon afterward, Colonel Merrick arrives at the island shores alongside Kiefer. Merrick attempts to convince Nick to walk away and allow Kiefer to deal with the villagers instead. However, Nick refuses to back down and stands firmly with the islanders.
You know, I envy you. You're gonna die for something you believe in.
The corporate executives and their loyal mercenaries temporarily leave the island to gather reinforcements. Once they reach the mainland, Kiefer assembles a local mercenary army and returns to the island on heavily armed speedboats to launch a full-scale assault. As the mercenary forces push inland, they begin triggering deadly traps prepared by the villagers, causing heavy casualties among the attackers.
Bullets are keeping the medics, aren't they?
Jamal leads groups of armed villagers through the jungle brush and successfully flanks the advancing enemy columns. Despite the resistance, the corporate forces eventually use heavy machine guns and mortars to force the defenders back toward the village itself. In the middle of the chaos, Jimmy G notices Grace pinned down by one of the mercenaries. Realizing he can no longer betray his friends, he suddenly switches sides and pulls out his twin pistols and shoots the mercenary dead. But Jimmy G is shot immediately in the head by Goldmouth, who attempts to take out his frustrations on Grace. Before Goldmouth can kill her, Grace shoves a grenade into his shirt that explodes and kills Goldmouth once and for all. Nick positions himself on a ridge and fires a high-explosive round directly into a structure packed with enemy mercenaries, killing many of them instantly, but Colonel Merrick survives the explosion. During the fierce firefight, Akar becomes separated from the group and is cornered by Blades. Akar fights back as hard as he can, but Blades physically overpowers him and brutally breaks his neck. Blades is also killed in a gruesome way when a local girl loops a rope around his neck tied to the speedboat and then starts the engine, violently dragging Blades to his death. Kiefer notices what happened and immediately shoots the girl dead on the beach before retreating back toward the caves. There, he discovers Nick cornered by Colonel Merrick during a tense standoff. However, Poe suddenly arrives carrying the chopped-off heads of the two corporate lawyers. Once Merrick realizes that the corporate employers are dead and there is no longer anyone left to pay them, he orders his remaining men to cease fire and stop the attack. Kiefer completely ignores the order and kills Colonel Merrick with a bazooka before confronting Nick inside the caves for their final battle. The two men exchange brutal punches and savage blows before Kiefer tackles Nick into a deep pool of water and forces Nick's head beneath the surface in an attempt to drown him. While underwater, Nick desperately searches through the mud with his hand and discovers a sharp, jagged piece of animal bone. He then drives the bone upward into Kiefer's throat before rolling him over and holds Kiefer beneath the water until he finally stops moving for good. After the grueling battle, the villagers and the surviving mercenaries hold a traditional funeral ceremony for Aker, Jimmy G, and all the fallen islanders who died defending their land. The story ends with Jamal and Grace boarding the trawler and preparing to return to the States, while Nick chooses to remain behind on the island. He quietly stands beside Loki and Poe on the shore, watching the boat disappear into the distance as the island slowly returns to its peaceful natural state once again. Subscribe for more dramas like this, and don't forget to like this video, it really helps the channel grow.